In this video, I'm going to show you how I make a duplex load to try to replicate the M1886 carbine cartridge. I got this out of Wolf's book, and I'm going by his information and everything else. Now, like in my video about duplex loads, duplex loads is kind of a controversial topic. A lot of people say it's dangerous, shouldn't do it, the antique guns. And shooting any of the old guns, there are the risks. So I'm going to have to say I'm making this video just for informational purposes. I cannot be held liable for anything that happens to you if you follow the instructions in this video. And any property damage, injury, loss of life, whatever, I'm not responsible for this. And also the disclaimer in this book, warning, all these black powder rifle loads are above the maximum pressure listed by some authorities. The above figures are for informational purpose only and do not constitute a recommendation as to the use, safety of any of the methods, components, loading, or cartridges listed. Do so at your own risk. Enough said, understand that. If you're not a skilled reloader, if you're new to this, I don't advise you to try it, but at least I'll show you how I do it. My results are good. Now people will go, why do you want a duplex? Well, I'm not shooting competition, I'm not shooting silhouette or anything. A lot of people go, well, if you use the right powder, compression and everything, and bullet lube, you'll have a clean shooting gun. I've tried several things. And the reason I like the duplexing is because I make a compact cartridge that the bullet's not hanging out of the case, that is basically, a lot of these target shooters will put in a 45-70 a bullet that'll, expand out, because a single shot you can get away with that. Some people don't even resize the brass, okay? There's many different techniques to be used to do this. This is just one. This is one that I like. And the reason I like it, even though it's controversial, is I can shoot. I don't get the buildup and fouling. I've made numerous videos showing you the different black powders in a 45-70 and the amount of fouling within 5 shots. Depending on the style of bullet, I get 5 shots. I can't chamber around. I generally clean the gun after 5 shots. With the duplex, that's not a problem. I can shoot 10-15 rounds and there's very, very minimal buildup and residue in the barrel. Now, what we're going to use, and again, because I did a video on this, I use several different powders. I have Graf's & Son, which is basically shoots and powder under the company label. This is probably the least expensive powder you can buy online. It's like a couple bucks cheaper than Golex. And also I was using Swiss, which is probably the most expensive powder you can buy. And Swiss is a denser powder. It really doesn't compress well as compared to the others. And Swiss has more energy to it because it is denser. Okay, and a lot of the competitors like this, because if you're using a technique with a drop tube and everything, this powder probably does, for that application, give you better accuracy in that. It doesn't foul as much as the others, it burns cleaner, but the residue left behind in the barrel is I found is really tough and hard. You have to scrub it out with a brush to get it to loosen up. It's hard. Harder than the others. The others are kind of soft and gummy. Now, the powder we'll be using for the duplex charge, the kicker, whatever you want to call it, I'm using IMR's SR Force 4759. Now this, in most of your published information on duplexing, this is the powder that's used. This is always the powder used, so I'm going to stick with this. I'm not going to deviate or try. Other people use different powders at different burn rates. That's fine, but I'm going to stick to what I had written down and published. Also, the black powder I'm using, this recipe calls for 2F. I'm going to use 1F, and this is for two reasons. Number one, the bigger granules burn cleaner, and also with black powder, your 3F, 2F, 1F, the pressure is lower. The bigger the granule, the less pressure, because there's, the bigger grains, less black powder. Compared from 1F to 3F would be a huge difference, even just using straight black powder in the pressure. So that's also like a little safety factor. 1F gives a cleaner burn, 4570 is big enough to handle it, and also a safety margin on the pressure. Now the bullet we're going to use the M1873 bullet. Now this is from the Lee mold. Try to get closer there. The Lee single cavity mold with hollow base. And this is an exact replica of the bullet with the hollow base. Okay? And that's what we're going to use. And I'm kind of redoing this video. I have gone out and shot this particular carbine load, and it works good. It's real accurate. I fired it in an 1873 rifle with buckhorn sights, and I got really good results. So then, use this information at your own risk. I can't be held liable if you make a mistake. Follow the directions, and the two key things are, and this one here is a little bit trickier, because we're going to have to seat the bullet down because of the reduced charge, another like a 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch lower, 150 thousandths lower, I believe. So this one here is a tricky one. But get the proper depth, make sure you get the compression. The two major things to pay attention: use standard primers. Okay, standard primers only. I'm using CCI large rifle. You don't need the magnums. Don't use them. And also, when you put the smokeless charge in and then the black powder charge, don't jostle, shake the case as much or any disturbance. You want the powder layered. Then compress. And even then, handle it once you get the cases charged until you got the bullet seated, holding it all together. Be extremely careful how you handle the cases with the powder charges. You don't want to stir it up or have the powder migrate. Okay? That's why these things are tricky, they're difficult, and you must pay attention at all times. Okay? Any questions or whatever, please ask, please email. If you don't feel comfortable doing this, I advise you not to. Thank you. Okay, the first step is to full length resize your brass. Okay? Put it up in your press, run it up in there, and you do your full length resizing. Even if the brass has never been fired and brand new like some of this. You run it up, give it a full length resizing. Okay? And the reason is that will change the length on brand new brass. So that's your first step. Okay, step number 2 is you check and make sure, because we're going to use a crimp on this. Overall length and all this is critical in your measurements, and the crimp. The brass should all be within the same length, within a thousandths or so. And I've already separated this, we don't have to trim, but I'm getting 2-inch 100 thousandths. And one book lists that as the trim to length, and there's another measurement of 2-inch 105 thousandths is the max. So all of these cartridges in the tray are within the same length, within a thousandths. So we don't need to trim. You may have to, what you want is you want all your cases to be the same exact length. It's critical for accuracy and in using the crimp. So that's the next step. Now we'll go on to priming the cases. Alright, the next phase of this is priming. Basically, I like using a separate tool instead of like a automatic primer system on your press or something. It's best to load loads like this, slow, sure, taking each step and doing it right. Prime it. Now, here's the important thing. This is the safety thing. This is where you got to pay attention. What I'm using is a standard CCI large rifle primer. Okay, do not use Magnum primers. Okay, and these flash holes are not enlarged like Wolf tells you to do. I really don't know if that enlarged flash hole would make a difference, but do not use Magnum primers. Use standard primers. You're using a smokeless charge as a priming charge. You don't want to use Magnums. It could be a safety factor. It could increase the pressure to dangerous level. Standard large rifle primers, any brand you like. Okay, and that's our first warning. Make sure you use your standard large rifle primers in this load. Alright, our next step is expanding the neck. And we're going to use the Lee Universal Expanding die here. And the reason we do that is you can buy inserts and plugs to put in there, and it doubles up. It can be a compression die. And what is a compression die? It's 45. What this is this is narrower. This is size case. This will go down, and this is what you can use to compress the powder. Then, from different companies, and I got this at Track of the Wolf, they make different size expanders for this. We're going to go with a 459 expander, which is the same diameter as a bullet, but brass does spring back about 2/1000ths, so it'll give me about 2/1000ths neck tension, maybe 1/1000ths. I used to use the 458, but I got this one here. We're going to give it a try and see how it goes. Just this. And until we get the bullet to seat in there, like that. Be a little more on that. There we go. That's still, I don't know. I don't like that. That slides in there pretty loose. I would like a little more neck tension. So I'm going to change that, same setup, but I'm going to put the 458 in there. That's, to me, that I don't like that. It's a little too loose. Okay, I swapped that one out, put the 458 diameter in there. And now that it's a little bit tighter. That's kind of what I want. I want a little bit of tension in there. If you had a real soft alloy bullet, that's where you'd want to open up that neck to where that bullet slides in there so there's not a lot of pressure and doesn't deform. If you were like with a 130 or 140, a real soft bullet, you'd want to go with that bigger expander. But then 120s are hard enough to where this should be sufficient and give me enough neck tension too. Alright, so we'll finish up with this and go on to the next step. Alright, now we're getting ready to charge the cases. This is the tricky part. This is where you got to pay attention, and this is what you got to do. First thing, take all of these out. Make sure they're empty, all the cases out of the loading block, and put them in this box. And what this is kind of my way of coming up with a safety feature. We all know that they're empty. And they're all out of the loading block. Now, what we want to do is put our first charging, or smokeless charge. So I got my automatic powder measure set up, and the recipe calls for 5 grains. 5 grains of 40 SR 4759. So we got this automatic dispenser set up, kick out 5 grains. Alright, and here's where the double charging and everything. So what you do is, the reason I did this is, I know there's 5 grains on there. Okay, I take an empty case, I get the funnel, I put it on. Put my 5 grain charge in, let my funnel on. This one has its smokeless charge, it goes into the powder measure, or the tray like that. Get in a habit of doing something like picking this, deliberately picking this up, emptying out, putting there. That way you won't double charge. Somebody calls you on the phone or whatever, and you get distracted. This is where you can make a very, very disastrous mistake. That's why a lot of people don't like this, don't like to do it, because it's easy to forget. And there's been a lot of reloading accidents, not so much just with duplexing, but people just losing track and double charging and not getting things right, or keeping the information right. Always double check. And if you look, it's really not an awful lot of powder going down in there. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's a very, very small amount of powder. It just basically covers the bottom of the case. And use this system, and then get your block filled up with your smokeless charges on there. 5 grains in each one. That way you know there's no double charge, there's no mistakes. Keep the flow going. And then the next step will be charging with the black powder. Trying to give you a better look at the powder. You can do that. Now that's all it is. Just that little bit. It's kind of a coarse powder. It's just a tiny little bit that goes in there. And just enough to cover the bottom. Okay, and I'll get back to you once I'm done with this step. Alright, the next step is we're going to take our cartridges with our smokeless load in there. We're going to weigh out 45 grains, and I'm using 1F. And the reason I'm using 1F is 2 reasons. It burns cleaner, and this load will have less pressure because of that. Kind of a little safety feature, even loading it down even more. So now I'm going to charge these all with black powder. Try not to shake or move it much to have the powder migrate, but now I'm going to charge all of these with the black powder load. Okay, so you got your smokeless in there, then your black, and then we're ready. And if you look down in there and see, you really can't double charge the black powder. It would overflow if you put double the amount in. So you can keep track of it pretty easy that way. The key is to make sure your smokeless load is not double charged in there, and then you don't want to vibrate, shake, or move as much from when you have it in this state to when you compress. We're going to go, the next thing is we're going to compress this a little, because there has to be at least a 100 thousandths compression. We're not using a drop tube, because the drop tube, even though that does compress powder a tad bit, I think a drop tube would disturb the smokeless in the bottom. So you just want to put a thing in there and gently pour your powder in That way you don't disturb or mix up the smokeless powder on the bottom of the case. Kind of do that as a, too. So like I said, just weigh it, put it in with the scale. Okay. Okay, now here's where you get to a tricky part here. Because this is a reduced load and it is duplex, we got to get into getting the proper compression so the powder don't move around and the proper length. Now, if you are interested in doing this, I strongly suggest you buy this book, J.S. Wolf, okay, because it explains this in detail and it's right on. Alright, so we got the smokeless powder, the black powder. Now we got to know how much we got to compress it and set our bullet and overall length. So what I have is, I have a bullet I'm going to use, which is a 459, I believe, diameter. Yeah, 459 diameter. And now I have this other bullet. And what I've done is I've sized this bullet to 453. Now why did I do that? Because then this bullet will easily, with this case, where there's neck tension for the actual bullet, will easily slip down in there. And I can get an idea with the powder, with the overall length. You zoom in on it. See, that's a trick I learned in one of these books. We take this other bullet, we make it way undersized, so now we can take this and put it into the case. So, to double check, to make sure you got the right length, take a bullet you're going to load, one of these, and measure it. Okay, I'm getting 1 inch 67 thousandths. Then I take this one, measure it, and I get about 1 inch 65 thousandths. So there's a 2 thousandths difference. Just bear that in mind, this is shorter. Okay, so now the length of this cartridge, the 1873 cartridge, should be, with this bullet, 2 inches 520 thousandths. So we put this in there. I see it's already going up to the crimp groove. So once we put that in there, we take it and we measure it. Hold it straight. Don't want to tip it or stir the powder up. Very careful. And I got 2 inch 500 thousandths. So 520, and Wolf says with this reduced load the overall length should be 2 inch 420. So it's about 80 thousandths difference. Okay, now this is where that bullet, we got to compress this a minimum of 80 thousandths, maybe more. So this is where this comes into play. We got our initial measurement. We know where we got to go using this bullet. So now we're going to take the bullet out, we're going to set the compression die up, and we're going to compress the powder until when we place this bullet in, it is the proper length. Okay, it's a little tricky, but it's got to be done. Okay, here's where I told you how our expansion die is going to do double duty as a compression die. So we're going to back this out. Put the expansion plug in. Here's your, no, take the expansion plug out, put the compression plug in. Alright, now we're just going to start this up here. That's all we want. Now we take our cartridge, take our bullet out. Place it in there and run this up. Okay, now we start to screw this down, and we're going to screw this down until the plug we start to feel tension. So give it a little twist. Okay, that gave it a little compression. Pull it out. Now we're going to take our bullet, put it in there, and we're going to measure. Now we want 2-inch 420 thousandths, give or take. Okay, we got 2-inch 480, so we compressed it 20 thousandths already. Alright, and what we're going to do is we're just going to keep going with it. Until we get it down there. Take it out, drop the bullet down, check it again. It's 60. Okay, 2-inch 425. So we want to go just a wee bit more. There it is, 2-inch 420. Okay, that's one. Now generally the powder's compressed, it won't move, so that kind of takes care of your problems there. You don't have to worry about it migrating or fooling around. It's just a very mild compression. Hold everything in place. Yep, 2-inch 420 it's holding. Okay, then we just run all our cases through the compression die. Then we're going to get ready and we're going to seat the bullet. Then we're going to crimp it in a separate operation. Okay, now we're going to seat the bullet. We're going to seat the bullet and we're going to crimp the bullet in two separate operations. So, we got our seating die set here in the press. We're not going anywhere near the roll crimp. And from where I had it the last time, I backed it off. And then we take our bullet, sit it in our case, get it started, put it in there and see exactly where we're going. Should be pretty close. Alright, then we know it's 2-inch 420 is what we're looking for. Two-inch 5, it was set to standard. Okay, so we got to go down a little. We got to go down 100 thousandths. Get it into where we want. So we make a little adjustment. Try it. Nope, a little bit more of an adjustment. And it's critical that you get it to the right length because that bullet has to be touching that powder or there'll be an air gap in there and you'll put a ring in your chamber. So this has to be pretty precise. And that bullet has to be seating on that compressed powder. So that's why there's no room for error. I mean within thousandths. Actually, you should set it to where the bullet actually compresses a little. Compresses the powder itself a little. That can help. A little bit more. A little bit more and we'll be there. Now you just adjust it. And that's it right there. 2-inch 420. We got it right down to where it should be. So it's a little odd looking, a little short looking. Now we're going to put a crimp on it. And once you set it, tighten it down, check a few of them as you run them to make sure that nothing's getting loose or moving on you. You know, don't think, oh, okay, I got it, and just do like 100 rounds. Run a few up there and then check like the first few, and then every 5 or something. Make sure your adjustment's not moving on you. Okay, last and final step. All the bullets are seated. Now all we got to do is put some sort of crimp on there. You can see the gap around the edges. We're going to try to crimp it. What we use is the Lee 4570 die set. The seating die has the proper tapered crimp without having to get a specially die. I pulled the seating plug out. And what I'll do is screw it down until I feel resistance against the cartridge. Right there. Okay, pull it up, set it down, quarter turn, and it's some but not enough. Hold on, let me get a wrench here. Okay, what I've done is gotten a wrench, turned it down a little. Ooh, it's got it. It's got it. I think if you can maybe see the difference. This is the crimp, this is the uncrimped. See the edges there, this is a little bit more beveled in. And that's where you got your crimp in there. The gap's gone around the edge of the cartridge. No, that one's still got it. Got it yet or no? No, I may have to just a little bit more turn. And you just adjust it to where it pretty much is crimped on there, like that. And that's it. That's your carbine cadet cartridge loaded up in a duplex. We'll go out and test them out. And I got both a carbine, a replica carbine, and a cadet model. And we'll see how well they do in both of them in terms of being calibrated to the sights and that. Yeah, that's coming out good. Alright, that's it for this cartridge, and until we get another different load or something, another type.